Hello, Startup Vision. I'm Thomas Bigagli, senior investor at Plug and Play. I've been involved in the tech scene since 5 years in different parts of the globe. First as a business angel and advisor, and then as a VC with over 25 startups backed.
Hello, in this new series of interviews, we will provide a guide for early stage startups funding, scaling also, and we will bring answers to the most important questions you might have directly from a VC perspective with Thomas Bigagli from Plug and Play, which is one of the most active VC fund in the world and the largest open innovation platform globally. The first interview is about why early stage fundraising is so important and how to approach it. So thank you, Thomas, for being with us here on Startup Vision. So can you explain why fundraising is so important for a startup?
Of course. Thanks, Florence, for the invitation. I mean, as you know, fundraising is key. Startup founders, they always need additional funding to improve, expand, grow, or even start their business. Several studies showed that lack of capital is actually one of the most common reasons why startups fail or postpone their growth, which can actually let other players to gain more market shares. So this is why startups opt for startup funding. So after acquiring the right amount of funds, the founders must ensure that the money raised goes to the right place. And actually, they will need to prove that to their potential existing or even future investors. And they need to deal with a variety of processes like gaining traction, expansion, ideation, and so forth. And all of these processes require money. And defining how much, when, and at what valuation will help them to better manage their runway and future successes.
So when should a startup consider fundraising, you think?
I mean, all the trajectories are different, which means that there is not one time to start fundraising. They have you can find general rules for early stage ventures is that you are in good position to consider raising funds when first you validated that there is a problem that needs to be solved, that the market is interesting enough and where you can gain market shares, and that your solutions have been exclusively tailor-made for it. And second could be that you can demonstrate demand for the solution through customers' references or tractions. Of course, all of the reasons and timing of fundraising, they might be different from one stage of a startup to another.
So what are the main reasons to start fundraising, as you mentioned?
Several reasons, but I would say the first one will be to finance your operations and grow the team that got relevant expertise. The second could be that you already have a lot of interest from end users or customers and you want to satisfy the demand to then gain market shares rapidly. The third one could be that, as you know, the fundraising process doesn't happen overnight and cash flow management is key. So you should constantly be raising. And the last one could be that the investors can actually add a lot of value. So fundraising, they will give you, of course, some capital, but the portfolio promises of strategic investors could be really valuable. And this is what you need to identify as well.
Yeah, and what reason would you have to wait to fundraise?
Similarly, I mean, as we just been discussing, if you have enough resources to strive for a while and demonstrate more tractions, this could actually boost your valuation and help you to find better investors. So it can make sense, that you want to make the most of your existing resources before fundraising to have an even more qualitative random fundraising, which that could be a good strategy. The second one could be that you prefer to focus on your operations and technology at the beginning, although it's a bit tricky simply because if you focus too much on your technology and operations and do not try to boost your tractions, that will actually bring you some interesting feedback. Then when your technology will be ready, you might not have cash anymore to scale and satisfy the demand.
So everybody is wondering, how much capital should I raise? So how do you determine that?
I mean, you should raise only as much money as you need to get to the next phase. of your company's growth. But I say there's no perfect formula, but two things, in my opinion, are the most important ones. On one end, always focused on your milestone. So as you know, milestone could be specific metrics within a certain timeline, like launching new features, acquiring X customers, reaching 100K MRR and so forth. But this milestone will help you to prove to your investors that the amount of funding you require is to reach that milestone. And the next round of fundraising, then you will be able to prove that with the amount of money you raised before you reach this milestone or even bigger, and now you want to jump into the next one. And on the other end, you need to predict wisely your runaway. So because if you rush your fundraising and you run out of cash, then you might not be able to scale as much as you want. And if you want to define how much money you need in advance to better manage your cash flow, always make sure you know how much it will cost you to reach the next milestone. So how many headcounts will you need? So how many engineers, marketing experts, salespeople, their salary, and so forth. The admin needs, so the equipment, the rent of office spaces, and so forth. And also the marketing and advertisement budget. So boosting your go-to-market strategy, inbound, outbound marketing, and so forth. And as soon as you figure out your company total monthly spend for these people, admin, and marketing, then you multiply this figure by the number of months you think it will take you to reach this milestone, basically.
And another very important question, of course, is how do you set your valuation?
I mean, your company valuation is a subjective assessment of the startup. The startup was, and it often it's what the investors are willing to pay. But it's also really dependent on two factors. So the first one will be the amount of money you raised and the amount of equity you have given up for this amount that you are raising. Most funders give up roughly 20% of their equity at the seed stage and another 20% at their Series A. And of course, you can also base your analysis on comparables from key players in your field to justify the amount of money you need and your valuation. But that's generally how much money and equity you are willing to raise and to give out at the beginning.
And do you see common traits in startup fundraising strategies?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the startup land rules, they are more often broken than not, such as the amount of money startups have been raising per stages that increased tremendously. Seed stage 10 years ago was not the same amount of money raised for a seed stage right now. But common trait we could see, yes, is that, for example, the valuation is typically 3 to 4 times more what you've been looking to raise. So let's say if you are raising 1 million, your valuation should, be between 3 to 4 million most of the time. Second could be that the round size tend to increase by roughly 5 times more between each financing round. So if you've been raising 1 million for your seed stage, then you should roughly raise 5 million for the next one. And third, that the amount of financing should provide you roughly 15 months runaway. So actually it's most of the time ranging from 12 to 24 months, but on average is around 50 months runaway. So to actually reach this milestone you have set up.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing all those tips. And would you have a last advice?
Yes, I mean, a lot. But one that comes to my mind that is pretty generalistic is that startups should map out their company's journey in distinct phases. So as they are trying to get investors excited about their company's journey, it's often useful to not only talk about their current round, but also how they reach that stage. So it's important to put into perspective the previous and following phases by first showing how much money they raised, the valuation, the investors, but which milestones they wanted to reach, at what cost, and how did they perform. Because if you show that your milestone was this one and you actually reach it or even better result by spending even less money, that's amazing. And that's typically what investors are really interested about. And by doing so, you will be able to raise even more money at a better valuation and with better investors.
That's a great advice. Thank you so much, Thomas, for sharing all those information, very important information. And we will see you very, very soon for other tips and tricks for startups to raise money or deal with VCs. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Florence.